Okay, this is an addendum to the audio training courses, just a last thing I needed to talk to you about in terms of tempo mapping. And this is tempo mapping for external files. If you're somebody who uses Persona Studio Live Capture, or you get your recordings from an external recording device, or somebody brings in stems from another studio, there's a good chance those files won't have tempo stamped in them. And if you're somebody who wants to take that information and improve or change the timing of the music, add additional loops or sounds, be able to export it into notation programs such as Notion and have it show proper notation, or even sync up independently recorded tracks to a song that you have in the studio, this is a video for you. A little background on the problem. The problem is, as we mentioned, files come in without the correct tempo or any tempo at all. When that happens, no matter what the track tempo settings are over in the track inspector where it shows time stretch, don't follow, follow, etc., those will ignore that without the track having a tempo, and it'll behave like it's in a don't follow mode no matter what it says there. Why is that? Well, the tempo track in Studio One shifts the file tempo to the new tempo. In order to do this, it needs to know the file tempo in order to do that math. So if it doesn't know that tempo, then it just doesn't do the math, and the file sits there static in a don't follow mode. It's also important to note that you may actually get a tempo in your file, but it may not actually be the right tempo. Why is that? For example, somebody in a DAW has set it up with a default of 120 beats per minute, and they didn't pay attention to it. They didn't use a metronome, so they weren't really conscious of the tempo grid that was in the recording at the time. Then they recorded the group live performance. The tempo was whatever the performance tempo was, but the files are going to get stamped with that 120 beats per minute. And so that's an example how quite often you're going to get files stamped with the wrong tempo. So here's a procedure to fix all that and to get the most out of it. First and foremost, as we talked about earlier, you have to do the tempo mapping of the song. That's to find the correct tempo for each measure of the song. Once you've done that, then you're free to use loops. All loops will sync with your song. MIDI audio converted to MIDI via Melodyne, or just plain audio can be quantized to the grid if you want. Quantized MIDI can also be exported out to notation programs, and it will show up properly in the notation program. And so here's the key to the whole trick is after you've done good tempo mapping of the song, then you can go in and balance each track, and that's all the events within that track. So if you've done some cut and slicing of the events in that track, you want to make sure that you grab them all at once when you're doing the bounce and bounce those back together. And when it does that, it will stamp the tempo map. All the individual timings that you have put in to the timing track will be actually recorded into that file, and that file will show you a map status. Okay, so the files with map and the tempo and they're set to time stretch will follow any change you do to the song tempo. So you can at that point smooth out tempo variations. You can shift the entire tempo of the song up or down, and you can do alterations of the tempo such as rubato, accelerando, etc. So let's take a look at what it takes to actually do this. Okay, so let's say you just did a live recording on your new Studio Live Capture system. You would like to bring it into Studio One and then be able to synchronize loops to it, fix some tempo, timing issues, speed up or slow down a song, maybe export some of the music out into notation format, a variety of different things that you might want to do with it. So let's go ahead and see what it takes to actually get that done. I'm going to go ahead and drag in some files. And you notice when we bring in these files, there's no tempo set to them. Each one of the individual tracks has not set in the tempo field. In order for us to start working on these, we've got to set this tempo. But it's not just any tempo. These are live performance. In this example, it's a live performance. So we're going to want to set the tempo equal to what was actually performed. So in order to do that, we'll have to tempo map it. And I've already gone through and created videos on how to do tempo mapping. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and tempo map this song. Okay, here's a song that's been tempo mapped to the measure level. So each measure of the song from beginning to end has been mapped out in terms of its tempo. I'll just go ahead and play that for you a little bit with the metronome on so you can hear that it's following it. if I were, for instance, want to straighten this out, change the overall tempo of the song, do anything on a massive level, it wouldn't work because there's no tempo set on them, so therefore they're not going to follow any tempo changes. So they're static. They're not moving at all at this point. So what I'm going to do is stamp each one with that tempo map, and all you have to do that is real simple. I'm just going to do a Control B, which is bounce in place, and I'm going to bounce that. When I do that, you'll see it says map there. I go through and do that to each tracks. Each one of them now says mapped. That means that file now has all of this data in terms of all these timings recorded into it. So what I'm going to do, just for grins here, is I'm going to bring out the line tool and just write a new tempo in here. It's going a little bit faster. So not only is it playing at a faster speed, but it's also playing at an exact tempo of 105 beats per minute. All the musicians are. So measure by measure, those things have been aligned to whatever they were naturally to, a single beat per minute thing. If we just wanted to smooth this thing out, let's just take that little section in there and just do a little smoothing on it. Here you see I've taken the tempo map file and I have gone in and quantized, and I just kept the natural tempo, but I used that and quantized the bass player and the guitar player to each other and to the grid. It tightens up the playing there a little bit, and I went ahead and did that full force, but you could adjust it, how you needed it, not necessarily quantize 100% alignment, but I just did that to demonstrate that. The song still has a feel, but you can see the drummer, bass player, and guitar player are a little more in sync with each other. Here's an example of applying about 4 or 5 real tracks from Band in the Box. You can see I've brought in some tracks here. Here's a shaker. I just manually brought in some samples. Shaker sample there. Piano. Throughout this series, I've encouraged Studio One users to use Studio One for more than just a digital tape recorder. If you teach the computer by, in essence, showing the computer the grid map that follows along the live performance, you get an enormous number of benefits out of it. And I've said that over and over in my videos. Here you're seeing examples of me lining up, adding things to, and even going in and doing notation compositions along with a live musician. It really opens up the entire world of letting that computer do the final work for you. And I would really encourage you to go ahead and take the time to do it and learn how to do it well. It's only going to get easier in the future with Studio One. Happy audio timing from Mustard Seed Recording.